Diana was in third grade when her father passed away. Her mother, Kate, worked hard to provide for them. Life was tough, but they had each other. 2 years later, a businessman named Arthur entered their lives. He liked Kate and proposed to her. She told him about Diana, and he had no objections. Diana liked Arthur at first. He was kind, caring, and treated her like his own daughter. But after their marriage, everything changed. At first, Arthur stopped talking to Diana as much. Then, he stopped smiling at her altogether. Family outings became rare. And when they did go out, Diana was no longer invited. The biggest change happened at dinner. One night, Diana sat at the table, waiting for her plate. Arthur glanced at her and then turned to Kate. "She doesn't have to eat with us," he said casually. Kate hesitated but then nodded. "Diana, eat in the kitchen from now on." Diana's heart sank. She looked at her mother, hoping for an objection. But Kate was already busy serving Arthur. From that night on, she ate alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair she once sat in. A few months later, Kate told Diana she was expecting a baby. Diana was excited, hoping the new baby would bring them all closer. But instead, she felt more distant than ever. One night, she heard whispers in the living room. "She is not our family, Kate," Arthur said. "Our real family starts now, with our baby." Kate was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. "Maybe you are right." Diana's chest tightened. Her hands trembled as she gripped the blanket around her. She wanted to scream, to run to her mother and ask why. But she knew she wouldn't get an answer. At school, her teacher handed her a notice. "Diana, your mother needs to attend the parent-teacher meeting next week." Diana clutched the paper tightly. "Okay," she whispered. When she got home, she hesitated before speaking. "Mom, there is a meeting at school. The teacher wants you to come." Kate looked at Arthur, who simply scoffed and said, "We don't have time for that nonsense." Diana's stomach twisted. But... "Enough, Diana," Kate snapped. "I'm tired. Stop bothering me with useless things." Tears burned Diana's eyes, but she swallowed them down. The next day, she sat in the classroom, watching as other parents walked in, smiling at their children. She kept glancing at the door, hoping, praying, that her mother would come. But she never did. The teacher sighed and moved on. Diana looked down at her hands, fighting back tears. Then, her baby brother was born. The house was filled with joy and laughter, but none of it included her. When Kate and Arthur brought the baby home, they took him straight to their bedroom, closing the door behind them. Diana couldn't resist. She tiptoed to the room, wanting to see her brother. Arthur caught her. "Why are you here? Go to your room." "I just want to see my brother," Diana whispered. Arthur shouted, "He's our son. You don't belong here." Diana looked at her mother, hoping for a word of kindness. But Kate was too busy with the baby. Heartbroken, Diana ran to her room and cried. One day, while her mother was in the kitchen, and Arthur was there with her, Diana sneaked into their room and gently picked up her baby brother. She smiled, holding him close. Suddenly, Arthur stormed in and snatched the baby from her arms. Diana froze. "Kate! Come here," he yelled. Kate rushed in. "What happened?" Arthur pointed at Diana. "She touched our son. I told you to keep her away." Kate's face darkened. She grabbed Diana's arm and slapped her. "I warned you." Tears streamed down Diana's face. "Mom, I love my brother." "You are not his sister," Arthur growled. "You are nothing to us." That night, Diana lay in bed, her cheeks stained with tears. She didn't understand how things had come to this. A few weeks later, she received a notice from school. Her fees hadn't been paid. She hesitated before speaking to her mother. "Mom, my school fee," she started softly. Kate barely looked at her. "I will ask Arthur." That evening, Diana overheard their conversation. "I won't pay for her school anymore," Arthur said. "She is not my responsibility. Enroll her in a charity school." Kate didn't even argue. Diana couldn't stay silent. Mom, you are okay with this? She asked. Kate sighed. Arthur takes care of me and our son now. You need to understand. You are not his responsibility. But I am your responsibility. Kate's expression turned cold. You are a burden, Diana. If your grandparents were alive, I would leave you with them. Diana's heart shattered. I love you, Mom. I love Uncle Arthur. I love my brother. But you treat me like an outsider. Kate's voice was like ice. Because you are an outsider. The next day, Diana was forced to enroll in a charity school. She felt sad and alone, missing her friends from her old school. One morning, Diana sat at the kitchen table, eating her breakfast. The maid poured warm milk into a glass and placed it in front of her. Diana looked at it, lost in thought. The table was set with a spread. Jam, butter, a boiled egg, and the glass of milk. Arthur walked into the kitchen, glancing briefly at the table. He didn't say a word. He just shook his head, turned around, and walked out of the kitchen. Diana gazed, following him as he left. Kate entered shortly after, scanning the breakfast table. She turned to the maid and said in a sharp tone, "Put the milk and jam in the fridge. No need for the boiled egg. Just tea and bread for her. That's enough." The maid nodded obediently, starting to clear the items from the table. And Kate moved toward the door, her back to Diana. Kate didn't even glance at her daughter. "Mom," Diana whispered, and Kate didn't seem to hear. She walked away as Diana weren't there. The maid quickly replaced the milk with a cup of tea and the bread, and then left without saying anything. Diana remained sitting there, staring at the tea, feeling the sting of rejection. Christmas arrived, and Kate handed Diana a cheap dress. Diana was happy. At least her mother remembered her. She wore it and wished Arthur and Kate a happy Christmas. Arthur didn't reply. Instead, he stormed into the bedroom. Curious, Diana listened from the hallway. "You bought her a dress," Arthur snapped. Kate explained, "I used the charity money for her expenses." Arthur calmed down. Diana's heart shattered. So, even this dress was charity? Diana felt like the air had been knocked out of her. Even the small gift was given out of pity. That night, she made a decision. The next morning, Diana, after a breakfast in the kitchen, she went to dining room, where Kate and Arthur were having breakfast. She stood in the doorway, gazing at them for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, she walked to her mother, her voice soft but steady. "Forgive me, Mom, for everything. Goodbye." Her words lingered in the air, but neither Kate nor Arthur said anything. They didn't even look at her. Diana felt no need to wait for a reply. Her heart was breaking. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the room and headed toward the door. That day, instead of going home after school, she walked into an orphanage. A kind woman greeted her. "Where are your parents, dear?" "My father is dead," Diana said softly. "And my mother, she is no longer my mother. She is married now to someone else. And she has a son." The woman hugged her. "You are not alone anymore." For the first time in years, Diana felt safe. That evening, when she didn't come home, Kate panicked. She searched for her, finally learning she was at the orphanage. Kate and Arthur rushed there. When Diana saw them, she didn't cry. She didn't run into her mother's arms. She simply stood there, silent. Kate's voice trembled. "Come home, Diana." Diana's eyes filled with pain. "Home? Where? With your family?" Arthur sighed. "This is nonsense. Let's go." Kate hesitated. The orphanage matron looked at Kate with disappointment. "Here, kids live because they have no parents. Their parents are no more. But you are alive. Yet you didn't do good with your daughter. She is the only child here who has a mother, but not anymore for her. She will live here with respect and love. She lived in your house but was humiliated. That won't happen again." Diana looked at her mother one last time. "Mom, I was your life once. Now, I'm just a burden. Let me go." For the first time, Kate saw the damage she had done. But it was too late. She paused for a moment and added, You are not my mother. And Archie, your son, is not my brother. I have to fix these things. God bless you. I have to go now. Diana turned away, stepping into her new home, where she was wanted. She didn't look back. Not even once. As the door softly closed behind her, the weight of years of hurt seemed to lift off her shoulders. She was free. But behind her, Kate stood frozen, her face pale and lifeless. For the first time, her heart ached with the realization of all she had lost. The love she had taken for granted. The daughter she had pushed away. Arthur stood beside her, his arms crossed, his face hard. Kate's voice cracked as she whispered, "I never thought it would come to this." Arthur didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Diana was gone, and with her, a part of Kate's soul. Arthur and Kate left away. No one would disturb them. They knew this well now.